The next step in consumer decision making we're going to look at is the evaluation of alternatives. The consumer has had need recognition, is motivated, searched for information, created consideration set, and now it's time for them to evaluate the different choices that they have. In the rational model, it assumes that consumers apply a set of rules, okay, about the criteria in some systematic and formalized way. There are two basic types. The first is a compensatory model. And all that really means is that consumers will weigh both positive and negative criteria, bring them together and come out with an overall judgment. For example, take how somebody might look at different cars. Some cars are more expensive than others. Some cars that are more expensive also get better gas mileage and may have better reliability. Other cars are less expensive, aren't quite as reliable, perhaps don't get as good gas mileage. And consumer will weigh those different features for each vehicle and let positive features, criteria, outweigh or compensate for negative criteria. For example, a high price. So quality compensates for high price. The result is that consumers usually reach an overall judgment about the brand. It's just like when you perhaps had to select which college to go to. All the colleges have different pluses and minuses, positive and negative criteria. And you pick the school that has the best balance of those. So it's a very holistic judgment. We look at everything to a large degree and then weigh them in totality. In some ways, it's very similar to the attitude model that we worked on for the different restaurants. The different restaurants had different strengths and weaknesses, and those were reflected in the overall attitude score. The next model is the non-compensatory model. It's the opposite of the compensatory model. Here, brands must meet or exceed some threshold for important determining criteria. If they meet the threshold or exceed, they'll stay in the consideration set. If they don't, they'll be removed from the consideration set. So failure to meet a threshold is a deal breaker. For example, if you're going to purchase a Bluetooth speaker, you may decide that you don't want to pay more than $100 for a Bluetooth speaker. That means any Bluetooth speaker in your consideration set that costs more than $100 will be eliminated, regardless of its other qualities. It also means that brands will be eliminated if they don't have your must-have features. You may decide that your Bluetooth speaker must be waterproof. So any Bluetooth speaker that isn't waterproof will also be eliminated from your consideration set. Now, the importance between the compensatory and the non-compensatory model is that in our examples with the Bluetooth speakers, in a compensatory model, you will let strong features compensate for weak features. So you may end up purchasing a Bluetooth speaker that costs more than $100 because the quality is so good. And you may end up purchasing a Bluetooth speaker that isn't waterproof because you get a great price and it's just too good a deal to pass up. Where in the compensatory model, those brands would be eliminated. A different model is a heuristic model. Heuristics are mental shortcuts, rules of thumb, things we've adopted or learned over time to help save us time and effort in decision making. So the idea is we're not always rational. We don't have time. We don't want to put out the effort, especially when involvement is low. So we use these shortcuts to make decisions. Some examples are we might make base decisions on brand name instead of looking at the features and attributes. We may look at the differences in the type of brand name, whether it's a store brand or whether it's a national or independent brand. We may, decide that price-quality relationship is important, so we can use price as an indicator of quality. Or we may figure that it's not important at all, and so we'll go with price. Things like the greater number of features and attributes may signal to us that it's a better product. The bandwagon effect is when we see lots of people purchasing it, or there's a long line in the store to check out. We may assume that that brand or that product in the store is the most popular one. We have certain ideas about the country of origin. Where is the best place to get chocolate or coffee? Different places around the world are known for making different things. Other heuristics might be, hey, if it's newer, the latest model, it's better. Having more features, getting more ounces is better. Bigger is better. Anyway, the point with the heuristics is that while oftentimes they do a pretty good job, many times you end up with less than optimal decisions. And that marketers can take advantage of this by making sure that the brands that they advertise and how they package their materials take advantage of the heuristics that people are using. Associated with the heuristic model is a use of biased thinking. And there are several cognitive biases that are used particularly a lot by consumers when they're making purchases. And we'll just cover a couple here. There is a video in this section that goes over 12 different ones, which is very entertaining. The first one is the availability bias, which just says that we rely on information that is easily available to us, whether it's presented to us online, in a store, signage, or what we can easily remember from our memory. And the idea is we look at that information and assign it a lot of credibility. And we make our decisions based upon that, as opposed to digging and looking for additional information or considering the source. For example, if we're investigating a product and we look at their website and they post lots of information about reviews and quotes from customers and different ratings that they get from other websites, many times we'll just use that information to make a decision because it's really available. We don't go in and look at reviews or go in and search for other reviews or other information. We just take advantage of the information that's at hand, and without ever really considering its objectivity. So it can often lead to less than optimal decisions. Another common cognitive bias is the anchor bias, which just means we rely too heavily on initial information. And then as we make adjustments, we do it from that original piece of information, and those adjustments are often insufficient. For example, a sales clerk in a jewelry store, when you're shopping for a necklace, might start off by showing you the most expensive necklace in the store. Let's say it's $5,000. Then they'll move to less expensive necklaces. And the next one might be $4,000. That might seem like a significant discount to you, but the fact is that necklace could be worth only about $3,000. But because you're working off a $5,000 anchor, $1,000 from $5,000 to $4,000 seems significant. So the adjustment really has to do with how far away it is from the anchor, and less to do with really what is the quality or the value of that necklace. And it also works in the other way. If you start off, or a customer gets a low ball quote for a brand or a service, let's say you're taking your car to get fixed, and you go to one shop and they quote you $1,000 to fix your brakes and do a bunch of work. And then you go to another shop and they charge you $1,400, or that's the quote. that 1400 will seem a lot more because of your adjustment is from $1,000. And the other shop at the quoted 1400 could be doing more work, putting in better parts, and have a better reputation. But because you're working from the original anchor, the 1400 seems like it's a lot more, and therefore you're probably going to select the original quote for $1,000. So why is it important to know what type of rules your consumers use in making decisions and evaluating the alternatives? Well, first of all, if you understand the rules and the models that your consumers are using, then you can make sure that your product and your advertising copy and your marketing fits the rules that people use. If people are using non-compensatory types of rules, then you have to make sure that your brand fits on all the important criteria. If they're using a compensatory model, then it isn't quite as important as long as you can balance or compensate for the areas you're weak with some strong criteria that give you an advantage over your competition. It lets you know that if you know the rules that your consumers are using and your brand can't win based on those rules, that you need to change the rules that people use. You have to change them from either using a heuristic that price and quality don't go together, or country of origin matters, or that bigger is better. And that's the only way that you can win. So you have to invest in advertising and educating your target market that there's a better way, a different way to evaluate the brands in such a way that your brand comes out on top.